It's early morning. You're drinking your coffee. A notification appears on your cell phone. More About Storytelling has a new episode. Roll Initiative. This week we're talking about tabletop role-playing games made famous by things like Dungeons & Dragons. I'll be interviewing Kamloops, British Columbia's local legend Tyler Carpentier and more. So stay tuned. Let's go. Once upon a time.
In a galaxy far, far away.
It was a dark and stormy night.
Gather round, my friends. Let me tell you a story. Tabletop role-playing games makes you think of D6, D12, D20s, all those nerdy dice and things that you've seen in game stores. You've probably heard every joke, every insult in the book about the unwashed masses in their parents' basements, which honestly couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, every stereotype has its histories, but modern TTRPGs are a place where people of like minds can get together and tell a story together, earning it the name collaborative storytelling. Most of these games are almost always set up or ran by a storyteller or somebody who has a talent for doing so. You generally have to understand all the rules, and you're known as either a game master or a dungeon master or a keeper, or there's 100 different titles. Myself, I never really got involved into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff in the early years. I played some of the early RPGs in the 90s, like Rifts or Werewolf or Vampire the Masquerade with some friends of mine in Nanaimo. But I didn't get into D&D actually until probably only a few years ago, and that was because of things like Critical Role, Legend of Vox Machina, and of course the interest of my kids. But where I really built a name for myself was once I moved to Kamloops, and I met a coworker of mine who was into RPGs and gaming, and he told me about a small local convention. Well, small at the time, I suppose. And they were looking for people who knew how to run different types of games. They wanted things more than just Dungeons and Dragons. They wanted some things more niche. Now, there is a British game company called Modifius, and Modifius produced a 2D20 formula system that they've used successfully in a lot of games like Star Trek and so on and so forth. But one of the ones that they recently used this system for is Fallout, the role-playing game. Yes, that Fallout. The atom bomb, baby, little atom bomb Fallout of game Bethesda, games fame. And, of course, the current Amazon Prime show, which, by the way, I absolutely love because a lot of people hate on it because, yes, it makes some, lore kind of concessions, but there's so much fan service in it, and it really captures the atmosphere of what Fallout is. So there's me wanting to tell stories and have fun, and I'd only recently moved back to Kamloops and was looking to get into new communities. So I signed up, and I went into KamCon as a game master for Modifius's 2D20 Fallout role-playing game. But of course, in my standard fashion, I took it a step further and I created a setting in the Fallout world based on Kamloops. I thought it would be fun, and I've always been kind of fascinated what happened to the North in Canada in the Fallout universe. So there I am, and I've created, super mutant moose, two-headed cobra chicken, Canada geese that poison you, radiated beavers. And we went to town, and it was a blast, and it was a hit. And every time I've ran that game in the 3 years since that I've been running it, I get my table sold out. So today on the episode, we're not here to really talk about me and what I've done with Fallout. What we're here to talk about is Kamloops, British Columbia's very own local legend, Tyler Carpentier. Now, Tyler is one of the co-founders of the KamCon Gaming Convention, where I've been running the Fallout game. And it was also my first convention where I ever got to be behind a table to sell my books and talk to stuff. And I've been with KamCon and been friends with Tyler and James Drucker and all the other incredible people that are involved in this convention for 3 years now. And it's been absolutely fantastic. Every year the convention grows. Every year it takes over more floor space at Thompson Rivers University. Every year it welcomes more people in through the doors. So there's not enough good things I can say about it. And it is my absolute honor today to be interviewing Tyler, who not only has built a community for gaming here in Kamloops, but he's also a advocate of youth sports. He's very active with baseball in our community, and he's just an all-around awesome guy, very altruistic. I can't wait. I hope you hang out, listen to our conversation, and roll some dice, man. Roll initiative, create a character, join a TTRPG somewhere. You'll be surprised. It's not what you think it is. I guarantee you that.
All right. Hello, Tyler. Correct me if I'm saying this wrong. Carpentier. That's how you say your last name?
It's close. It's Carpentier, which is also why my whole life I've gone by Tyler Carpenter.
Tyler Carpenter. That's good to know. That's actually good to know. I've always said Carpentier in my head, but Carpentier, that's what you said?
Carpentier, yeah.
Carpentier. Okay. Yeah, I'm in one of my previous episodes we talked about how bad I am at French accents. So it's kind of awesome that we went over that right off the get-go. So Tyler, a real honor, honestly, to have you on my show as a guest here. I know we've only met a few years now. We crossed paths because of KamCon, the gaming convention here in Kamloops. And man, like, honored to have you on. I know you do some awesome things for the community here in Kamloops. So I guess let's start out by like tell me your story, Ty. Like how did you come into gaming and how did this all get started for you?
Yeah, there's a few different approaches that I could come to that question from. Kind of looking back in the history a little bit, when I was in high school, a friend introduced me to role-playing games, and we played Rifts. And I'd never played RPGs before. I had heard about Dungeons and Dragons, and that was about it. And so my first exposure to RPGs was Rifts, which was probably good because Rifts as a system is very... It's laser taxes. It's very difficult. The setting is fantastic, and I really enjoy the setting. But I didn't know better, so I just thought, oh, that's just how it is, and I just was able to dive into learning it, not appreciating that there are easier systems out there. And so I played that for a few years and had really fond memories of doing that. And it wasn't until, God, we're going into ending our 8th, going into our 9th year for KamCon. So it was probably about, I want to say 12 years ago or so, right around shortly after 5th edition had come out. And I had heard about how easy this new edition, this new system was, and how accessible it was. And I thought, you know what, maybe it might be fun to play D&D, because I never have. I had played Baldur's Gate and stuff like that, but that does all of the crunchy stuff for you. So I looked into it and got a hold of a couple friends and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and let's see if we can get a game together. And before I knew it, I was running 2 games and had an absolute blast with it. And one game that I was running was pretty small. It was 2 friends and my wife, and I was running the game, and we ran that campaign for a couple years. And there's another campaign that I was running for close to the same length of time, and that was a bit bigger. We had 6 players at the table plus myself, and it was that larger group, about maybe a year and a half to 2 years or so into that campaign, where we started talking, hey, it'd be a lot of fun to go to a convention. And we started looking at different options, and we thought, well, there's this big convention in Edmonton that's not necessarily gaming, but they've got a good amount of gaming stuff, so that might be good. And there's San Diego, and there wasn't much else. There's a couple,
Hmm.
Comic Cons and stuff like that where there's like a corner or a room in the corner of the building kind of thing where they're, that's where we put the smelly gamers and we'll do everything else out in the big room. Um, and that wasn't really the scene that we wanted to go to. We wanted it to be more focused on gaming. And due to the lack of options, we said, you know what, like, screw it. Let's try to figure it out ourselves. So that's how KamCon was born, out of
Wow.
kind of combined in with the history of how I got involved with gaming.
That's fantastic, man. And it's funny because like having grown up here, like I was born in Kamloops at the hospital, and I grew up out here in Barrier. And like I started collecting comics in grade 11 and 12 back when the only thing in town was Riverside Collectibles, which is now High Octane Comics. But
Yeah.
yeah, like it's funny that you mention it because I didn't even know about tabletop role-playing games until I moved to Nanaimo to live with my dad in 1996. And ironically enough, the first game I was introduced to was also Rifts. I played a highwayman.
Nice. I was
Yeah.
a flyboy.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Yeah, it's such a great game, and but it's funny because like I played a couple games of Rifts with my friends, and then we played I think we were playing Mage what is it, Mage the Ascension?
The Ascension. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of a fun
yeah.
game.
Yeah, it ties in with all the werewolf, the apocalypse, and vampire and all that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And like I played like two or three games and then immediately jumped into writing one. I was like right away I was like, this is so much fun. I want to create my own. And we were calling it Dimensions, and it was sort of like Rifts, but you were superheroes and stuff, and we just tried to do it. So Ty, have you always been a DM or have you mostly been a player?
Started out as a player. Uh, when I was in high school, I had no idea how anything worked. So I was just like, I don't know, I'll just do what you say is appropriate to do. And once I figured it out, I had some more autonomy. With D&D, when I started that, was mostly as a DM, because I didn't know anybody else that was running games. So it was either I figure it out or we don't play.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard to play if you don't have somebody to lead the story, eh?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, can I ask you, like, because you're part of the industry and stuff now with CamCon, and you're heavily involved with all these things. Like, what do you think? Like, in your opinion, why do you feel the legacy of these games has lasted so long? Because like D&D came out in the '70s, right? Like Gary Gygax back in the first edition.
Yeah. It's I think when people experience the game itself, even if they don't have expectations on what they're going to experience, once they kind of get through that, they realize that it's more than just like sitting down and watching a movie. They actually have some agency over what's going on. So then they have personal investment. The kind of cheesy phrase is that they've got some skin in the game now. They
Yeah.
feel a lot more invested in what's going on. So I think that's a big part of it. Once they experience it, they go, "Oh God, like that was really cool," because not only was it a neat story, but I got to decide things, and I felt some of that pressure, or I felt some of that excitement more more directly than just watching a good movie. So I think
Yeah.
that's one of the main things that really draws people to it, and especially people that are really kind of curious about it and never really played games before, RPGs before. Once they try it, they, more often than not, it's like, oh wow, I was really excited to do that.
Yeah, that's what I found too. Like when I moved back from the coast up to Kamloops here, I one of my first jobs was at the horse barn in Kamloops, and in talking to some of my coworkers there about how much I did with D&D with my kids, they were like, "Oh, we've always wanted to try, but we didn't know anybody who knew what they were doing," and blah blah blah. And the one comment I got all the time was, "It's not what I expected."
Yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly. And
You,
it's especially if people are so used to playing board games, they expect more of that the visual or the tangible of moving things around. And you get into that with minis, but it's so so separated from that kind of experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that, with my kids and stuff, we really liked we played that's another interesting thing that I find about TTRPGs. Like, for the listeners, sorry, we're using that acronym. It means tabletop role playing game. But I found there's so many different ways to play it. Like with all of us down on the coast, my kids and everything in the coast, we were very heavy into using minis and maps. And I think because we came from Warhammer 40,000 and started playing Dungeons and Dragons too. But it was still that same, everyone at the table has their agency and stuff. But then when I met you guys and I became a game master volunteer for KamCon and I ran Fallout with you guys, that was just pen and paper. It was pure theater of the mind. And it was such a different experience for me to go from mini to paper.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of KamCon and running games with you guys, like I think it was last year I was talking to one of the other dungeon masters, one of the other game masters there that was running one of the games, and he used the term collaborative storytelling in terms of in like reference to what TTRPGs and why they're so popular. What do you think about that? Like, is that kind of basically feeds into everything you were saying about player agency? Hey.
Absolutely. And that's that's a phrase that really neatly sums up the experience of role-playing games. uh, Part of my job, my day job, I get to run social development groups for neurodivergent youth, and we use role-playing games, and we just play games, and the kids love it because they're going to a group which is normally for a lot of kids like, oh god, I've got to go do this, like, okay, here's this obligation, let's get out of the way. But they really genuinely uh, love it and look forward to it and can't wait, and they talk about it afterwards and all this sort of stuff. um, but where I'm able to do that as part of my job, because that collaborative storytelling, um, it's not just me feeding them information. They've got to engage with it, and they've got to give back to the story. And whenever I'm explaining it to parents or to people that are getting into the game or any of those sorts of situations, or people that are just curious about what a role playing game is, um, that concept of collaborative storytelling is so, so important, because it's not just the DM or the GM that is deciding, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen, because that's what a movie does. The director says, here's we've got a script and this is the movie and this is exactly what's going to happen. Going into a RPG, even the person running the game really kind of has an idea of what's happening in the world, but they don't know what's going to happen at the table over the next 2 or 3 hours or so. uh, the players can decide, I'm not going to engage with that, that goblin over there, because I'm just not interested in doing that. I'm going to go this way instead. And then you just kind of have to roll with that. And that agency that players have, that's their collaboration, that's their contribution to the story. And it's such a departure from what most people expect with RPGs, because they're so used to, video games get really linear. Even with some of the sandbox ones, they can still be quite linear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a departure from that, where you've got all of that agency, all of that decision making power. And when the kids that I work with, when they realize that, oh geez, we can actually contribute towards a story, then they start to really sink into their characters more and start thinking about the motivations and start thinking about their decisions and the consequences and how their decisions impact the world around them in the game. And before they know it, they're learning all of these really critical social skills because they're just having fun playing a game, and it's kind of fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really glad you touched on that, because that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Like, I know you do a lot aside from, just being an avid gamer and a very spirited individual and stuff. You're very heavily involved with the community, especially with like at-risk youth and stuff like that. So what are the, like, you mentioned a couple of the skills that these kids are getting out of playing these types of games. Like what do you think most of them are the most important ones?
Oh, that's a tough one because I don't want to say, two or three skills as the most important because there's such a huge variety of skills.
Right.
That's a great question, but it's a tough one to answer. The understanding, one of the really important things for these kids is, and for any kids really, is understanding how their actions, their words, what they do, how they move, all of this sort of stuff, how all of their actions have consequences, good and bad. And something that they think is innocent could completely piss somebody else off, and then they've got to deal with this surprise of bad consequence. And when they're learning that in their own personal lives, they're, say they're at a hockey game, they're at a Blazers game, and they do something and somebody in the seat in front of them gets pissed off and turns around and yells at them for it. Like, that kind of stuff happens in community, with these kids doing, just going about their lives. And we all know kids have made mistakes here and there, and they have someone bark at them about it. They'll shut down, and a lot of times in those moments they will not learn the lesson because they shut down so much. It's just like, I just don't even want to be here right now. And so they're not
Yeah.
paying attention to any kind of correction or lesson or anything like that. Whereas in the game, one of my favorite examples, some kids were, they were going into this town, but on their way into the town, they're going through like a wooded area, and they decided, yeah, we want to go hunting because they know they're learning about the downtime activities and they want to try to fill in some flavor here and there. So we role play a little bit of hunting, and they hunt down this deer, and that's fantastic. And one of them goes, I think I want to try to like taxidermy it if I can. And I was like, well, we're out in the middle of nowhere, so it's limited what you can do, but you can try.
Mm-hmm.
And so they rolled poorly. And
Oh no.
so I grabbed my phone and I did a quick Google search for bad taxidermy deer head and found this absolutely cursed image of this. Like, it's
I can see where this
hilarious.
is going.
It's so bad, it's funny. And so they've got this cursed looking deer head taxidermy that they can carry around with them now. And so I'm like, this is going to be a fun joke at some point, I'm sure. And being kids, they went a little bit too far with it, and they started using spells to drop this image of this cursed deer head in everybody's head that they saw.
No,
So they're using magic to airdrop this image basically into random villagers. And while they're going through the village, initially they're like, oh wow, this person over here, that they've got some dogs, and we buy a dog from them. That would be really cool to have like a dog companion. That'd be sweet. And they go to a shop and they buy this stuff, and they go to this place and they do that. And by the time they've done a few things in this town, they realize, or the town realizes, these are the bastards that are putting this image in our head.
Oh no.
And so the town like uprises around them and kicks them out. And one of the kids got really upset, like, I want to go buy that dog. You said I could do that. I was like, not anymore. What you guys did, pissed the town off. They don't want you there anymore. This is a consequence to doing that. This is the same as like airdropping random things into someone's phone on the bus. Like, don't do that. And initially that shock and disappointment. And it was real because they get so invested in the game. But initially the response to it was like, oh, well, why is this happening? And once they understood, it was, oh, I didn't even really think about that they would get mad about it. I was like, well, yeah, people will get mad about that. Like, think about if somebody did that to you. It'd be confusing, and you'd probably get mad because it's confusing.
It's like forcing an image into their heads, right? Like, yeah.
Exactly. And so that's a really great example of how just going through the game and letting them just be silly and goof around and do whatever, they get that really sharp negative consequence. And then you can actually have a conversation about it in that moment. And they're actually absorbing and learning the stuff from that conversation. Where if it's them personally in trouble, they'll shut down and they'll not be able to listen. Not that they don't want to, but they're just their anxiety and their frustration in that moment, they can't process that instruction or that correction coming at them. But because this is their character that was in trouble, there's a character that the village was pissed off at, and all of that sort of stuff, they've got this little bit of detachment from that sense of anxiety and grief and frustration. And so they're able to logically process, oh, this led to that. There's a connection there. Okay, I didn't see that. Maybe I don't agree with it, but I can see how it could maybe come about that way. So that they're able to better process and better learn those things in those kinds of environments. It's really, really quite fascinating.
That is very cool. Yeah, I haven't had a lot of experience to play with kids, other than my own. There was one game that I ran for my DM down in the coast. He had two teenage boys, and I invited them over one day because he had the DM's curse, which is he never gets to play. So I said, "Why don't you come over and I'll run a game for you and the kids?" And they after they left, he texted me when they got home and he said, "Just want to say thanks again, man. My kids had a blast. They said that having you at the table was like being DM'd by Jack Black." I took that as a compliment. But like, it's funny that you bring up like consequences and letting people do their own things, because I know one game I ran, I had this tiefling shopkeeper that was ran a magic shop, and she was a bit flirty, but I'd written her as a character quirk where if anybody tries to screw her over or mess up or get a bad deal or whatever out of her, that she would curse whatever item she sells to the characters. And sure enough, every single member of my party tried to swindle this poor character. So she ended up becoming the BBEG of my campaign because they just made her so mad that she became the villain and stuff. It was, and it was pretty cool. But like, that's what I love about it. The best thing about TTRPGs that I've experienced, and maybe you could provide your thoughts on this too, is that very few times when people have come over to my house to play, Survive Atlantis or Gloomhaven or any of those types of linear board games you mentioned, do they message me later or when we cross paths a year later, reminisce about things that happen. But with TTRPGs, it's almost every single session has a moment that people remember.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really amazing how invested people get in it. And I can see how it's before my time, but the whole satanic panic thing that was going on in the 70s and in the early days for RPGs, I can see how people who really didn't understand would come to that conclusion. Clearly, it's completely wrong, but because people do get really invested, they speak of their character as I. They insert their self into that to a certain degree, because when you're playing that character, you start to feel like, well, how would I deal with this if I was this character? And yeah, they get so connected to that, and that investment is so much more rich than a piece on a game board or a character in a movie or something like that.
Yeah, I guess because it's like you said before, it's buy-in, right? Like it's your character. It's literally for good or for bad. It's who you want to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And and it makes me think too of like when I did my game design. I think that's part of what makes me a good DM is when I did my game design diploma, I excelled in the what they call narrative design department, or part of the course, which is writing story for games. And what they talked about a lot was they called it non-linear storytelling in the gaming industry. So it's how to write a story in nodes so that it's like a sandbox, right? Sort of Skyrim-esque. So it's not beginning, middle, and end, but you choose your own adventure almost kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I think that's why video games and everything else are so popular, is because of it's absolute escapism. Like there is no form of escapism in the entertainment industry that's more personal or more powerful than RPGs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of storytelling, that's awesome. So Ty too, like I want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the other things you do for the community. Like pop culture being such a huge part of your life with KamCon and everything else. You're also involved with local baseball, with at-risk youth, like we've already talked about.
Hmm.
Do you want to touch a little bit more about some of the other things that make your own story so damn cool?
Sure. Um, yeah. So, I just processing where I want to begin on this and how far back to go. Well, when I was a kid, growing up, we didn't have a huge amount of money. We weren't like destitute, but I wanted to play hockey because my dad played hockey, and I saw him watching it on TV, and I was like, I want to do that when I was in like kindergarten. And there's other kids that I knew that were starting to play hockey around that time, and it was like, well, we don't have the money for gear, so here's some soccer cleats, go run around. That was my first exposure to sport, and soccer really bored me. And it's now looking at soccer, it's a fantastic game, but it just wasn't for me. I just didn't enjoy it. And so just trying the kind of another option that was also not as expensive as hockey, it was like, okay, well, here's a baseball glove, and go try t-ball. And I liked it. Something about it, I was like, yeah, you know what, this is good, I'm enjoying this. And so yeah, just started playing baseball when I was quite young, and just loved the complexity of the game. I was able to pick that up pretty quick, how many moving parts there are. You look at it, if you don't understand that intuitively, it's, well, a guy throws a ball, another guy hits it with a bat, and guys run around, and technically that it does get as simple as that, but there's so many more aspects of baseball beyond just that. There's positioning, there's footwork, there's all the mechanics that go behind it. There's so much strategy behind some of the positioning that happens, and what kind of skills work best in different positions. And trying to hit a round ball with a round bat is unbelievably hard. And
Yeah.
especially because the goal is to try to hit that square. Like, that doesn't compute. So the challenge of baseball is what really drew me to it. And so I really got into that and played it through until I was not able to play it anymore. Basically, 18 under ball when I was in high school. Uh, it was at that point, it was like, okay, baseball's over. That's it. If you're not going to a collegiate program, then you're done playing baseball. Is basically it. And
Mm.
so I stopped at that point. Um, but it was a bunch of years later that I went to I think it was a collegiate game here in Kamloops, just to watch, because they had a tournament or something like that going on. I was sitting in the bleachers, and just the smell of the clay on the infield and the grass, and the grass had like kind of freshly been cut that earlier that day, and just the mixture of that with watching guys play, I was like, I got to play some kind of ball again. Like, I really need to. It'd been probably 15 or more years, or 12 years or something like that. It'd been a while. And so the only, at that point, the only accessible kind of ball was slow pitch. So I found a slow pitch team and started playing that. And my wife was kind of interested because she had never played it, but she thought, well, Tyler's doing this, and we'd be able to spend more time together. We talked about it like that. So she joined in and played slow pitch with me. And after a couple years, some guys in town that had played collegiate ball had decided to put together a men's recreational baseball league. And I jumped all over that, and I sucked. I just kept working it because it's hard. It's really hard. But absolutely loved it. And So I got involved with helping organize the league because it takes a small army to organize stuff. And
Oh
I
man,
just said,
no
you know
kidding.
what, right? Like, the game of baseball, playing it, there's so many moving parts. But when you get into organizing and dealing with booking permits and getting insurance and organizing individuals and sorting out teams and like all that sort of crap, it takes a lot of people. So I was able to get in because the league was quite young, and it wasn't hard to get in to help organize stuff and help promote it. And so that's how I got involved with helping organize men's baseball in town. And really, really thankful for the founders of the league, who most of them are still around and involved in some way. And it was probably, I think, 4 or 5 years after that, my wife and I became foster parents to a 13-year-old. And when he was 14, looking for extracurricular stuff, I was like, well, why don't you try playing baseball? And he goes, well, I don't know anybody involved with baseball. He was dealing with some anxiety and stuff like that. And I don't want to, have a coach that's going to yell at me. And I thought, well, I know enough to coach that level of house ball. Like, what if I was the coach? And he was like, well, that's the only way I'll ever do it. I said, great.
Wow. Oh
so
wow.
I got a hold of the Minor Baseball Association and said, yeah, if you guys need any coaches, I'm willing to do it. But our foster kid wants to play ball if I'm the coach and no other situation. So if we could arrange that, then I'm game. And they had me on. And that was a really, really fun year. He played baseball just that 1 year. He didn't continue on with it, which I told him, just try it, commit for 1 year. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. And that's fine. And he enjoyed it, but it just wasn't for him in the long run. But he did enjoy that year, that season. And we had a lot of fun with it. And yeah, so it's after that, and working at the time, I was working with the agency that I work with now in town, where we support neurodivergent youth. And the league really needed, or not the league, KMBA, Counts Minor Baseball, really needed a new coach for their Challenger program, which is adapted baseball for kids with any kind of disability, whether it's neurodivergence or physical disability or what have you. And they said, yeah, well, we'd love to have you out for a coach if you can, and maybe find a couple other coaches that can help. And so I jumped into that, and it's been so rewarding. Absolutely crazy to see how well these kids are learning the game and how passionate they get about the game. And it's a absolutely fantastic environment for them to, they learn the game and they deal with the difficulty of the game, and they learn how to manage that. But all of that translates directly into their own lives, and every single one of them is dealing with some kind of adversity. They're all dealing with their own disabilities, and learning how to deal with the adversity that baseball brings you translates directly to helping them deal with their own adversity in their own lives that's not related to baseball, because they get that practice of what it feels like to make a mistake and then get back up and try it again. Or what it feels like to have something really not work out and go, all right, well, you know what, let's try something slightly different. And then, oh, geez, look, it actually kind of worked this time. That kind of experience helps so much with so many of them. And yeah, I've been doing that now for, I'm not sure how many years, I think 5 years, 4 or 5 years. It's been really, really cool.
That is absolutely incredible, man. Like from co-founding something that's as big and had such a huge community impact as KamCon has, to running baseball leagues and all this at-risk youth. Like this is when you messaged me and said that you would love to come on the show after I announced it, I was just like, oh yeah, I gotta have Tyler on, and probably more than once, to be honest, because part of what makes storytelling so damn awesome is the people that are worth telling stories about. And you are one of them, sir. Honestly.
Oh, I appreciate that, man.
Oh, no problem. So I guess I'm just looking at the time here. There's a segment that I like to do at the end of all of my interviews where I like to ask what's called one more question. And it's usually out of left field. So we're going to be looking back at the gaming side of things
Yep.
because nerds for the win.
Right.
Are you ready, Tyler, for your one more question?
I am.
All right. Tyler, can you tell me what is the strangest NPC that you have ever had to create on the spot for one of your games?
Oh, Rollet. That would be his
Oh,
name.
interesting. That I'm
He,
already intrigued.
um, that they were in a city and they were looking for some information. So they went into like a bookstore, and I had underprepared this part of the world. So as they were doing it, I was keyed up to I just need to be really on my toes. And so they walked into the store. It's old and dusty. It looks like it's almost been abandoned, but there's signs that there's people that are doing stuff in there occasionally. But they don't see anybody. And so they walk in and they start to look around a little bit. And while they're exploring around the store, this little voice comes up behind the this counter in the middle of the store, basically barking out, "Who is it? Why are you here?" Totally out of sorts with itself. And they discover that there's this little drunken gnome that's been passed out on his counter.
Yes.
And he's so just lost in his own sauce. He's just in his own world, which is why the store is kind of run down. And he had some information, and they were able to talk with him, and they were able to find out some of his own, everybody has their own currency, what drives them to do what they do. They're able to
Right.
kind of figure out what he likes and what he did. And it was a really cool role play encounter. They really, really enjoyed it. And Rollet became a mainstay for
Oh,
that campaign for a long time. And I've carried him into other campaigns too, that I've put in different parts of that world at different times, or figuring out, what, this guy's probably been around and done a few things. So, but
that's
just this
awesome.
really eccentric, kind of lost in his own world gnome that deals with some minor magic artifacts and lots of books and lore and knowledge and that sort of thing. Um, and yeah, they really kind of started to like him quite a bit, and he became a fixture for a long time. Yeah,
That's
he was really
awesome.
cool.
So, like, just made him up on the spot because you're underprepared, and then he becomes like a fan favorite. It's like that
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
like
That right
classic.
there. That's the magic. That's the magic of TTRPGs, man. I love it.
Right?
Hey,
Yeah,
Tyler, man, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. Like, this has been a great chat. I always love having these kind of chats with you. So, like, thanks again for coming on the show. It really is an honor.
absolutely, man. Thank you. And anytime, I'm more than happy to come back.
Awesome. Awesome. We'll keep you to that.
All right. And there we go, listeners. Tyler Carpenter, not Carpentier, as I've been saying all this time. Carpenter. True local legend, Kamloops, awesome guy, amazing things for the community, as you now know. If you'd like to learn more about KamCon, Google KamCon. You can also find its official website at www.kamloopsconventions.ca. Please do consider coming up and checking it out and intending. It's usually in the falls. Check the website for upcoming information. You will always find me there. It is one of my can't miss events. I'll either be running a table selling my books, my Clawbreakers merch, all sorts of cool swag that I give away. I'll be running my ongoing Fallout tabletop role-playing game. Try to get on that one early. I usually run the table a 6 per. It's a 4-hour session. And we always have a blast. There's a lot of laughing. Not to toot my own horn, but last year I was called the Matt Mercer of Fallout. Matt, if you're out there and you're listening, please shout out to me, man. I have a bromance crush on you. I would love to have you on the website. Yes, I just said that out loud. Yes, I am slightly embarrassed, but I don't care. The dude is a legend, and I would love to have him on the show. So anyways, Matt Mercer of Fallout, that was a cool compliment. As always, if you like this show and you want to support me, please consider looking me up on Patreon. Your support would be helpful. You get free short stories every month, exclusive access to my behind the scenes, all sorts of crazy stuff, updates at Discord. It's fun. We have a blast. My convention circuit for 2026 is just starting to pile up. I've got some pretty big things coming this year. So yeah, you don't want to miss it. It's going to be wild. Thank you for all your support. I appreciate every one of you listeners out there. Thanks for sticking it out. And as always, thanks for wanting to know a bit more about storytelling.
Fade to black. The end.